This time, Boxing Day Bonanza.
No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible to once and for all rank who is the greatest team of all time. And yes, we have taken a bit of time out from our midwinter break to bring you a old school Christmas special. There's a Christmas tree up behind me somewhere. Our guests have got the tinsel out. Jamie will be adding a little bells to the backing track, I assume, just to give it that Christmas flavour. And what we're going to be doing today is a tribute to the festive season. We are going to do what they always do in football, which is cram in as much content as possible into a tiny space just to make it a bit rubbish at the end. Yes, we are going to attempt to go through 5 teams tonight. My name's Graham Dunn. I will be making the case for Oxford United. Might not be the only one doing that. Joining me, as ever, is Jamie Rooney.
Graham, good evening. I reckon the first original Boxing Day Bonanza probably dates back to 1963 in the English top flight when 66 goals were scored across all fixtures, including Fulham whopping Ipswich 10-1. 10-1.
Oh, we've probably gone past Pate News by that stage, but the commentator would have been applying the too much Christmas turkey line in that one, no doubt. Maybe a nice British pate a voice to go on.
Very good.
We're going to be doing 5 teams today. I am going to be doing the brilliant Heart of Midlothian, side in 2005, 2006. Jamie, you're going to be doing... who are you going to be doing?
I'm ripping up the history books. I'm going for recent football. I'm doing the incredible all-time great San Marino of 2024.
And we're going to be doing things a little bit differently this time around. We are going to begin with our statements of intent as to what ranking those teams should be. And then we have our specially invited jury. We are playing judge, jury, lawyers, witnesses for the defence and the prosecution. And we couldn't do it just ourselves. We've got a bumper crowd in today. So we have joining us Everton fan Declan Clark. Hi, Declan.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are we? I'm looking forward to this because it's like having it's like having a Christmas selection box, isn't it? You all the lovely stuff you've got in there. You got your dairy milk in there. You got your double decker in there, and I'll be the horrible curly whirly that you leave till last, probably.
And Declan, what team are you going for?
I am going to stay in my stomping ground, and I am going to go for Tranmere Rovers between 1992 and 1995.
A golden era. What's your hunch for what ranking and rating they would be?
Well, I would put them most firmly in the edge of greatness rank.
Edge of greatness. I like that thinking. Jamie, where have you got San Marino?
Well, I fear you're going to be building up Tranmere Rovers, Declan's Tranmere Rovers, because of a certain John Aldridge and your love and affinity for the Ian Rush want-to-be.
Don't worry, I'll be doing the opposite.
For San Marino, I'm going to really push my luck, and I'm going to try to push them into the third tier, touch of greatness, and let's see how I get on.
There isn't going to be room in Touch of Greatness because we are going to be having Hearts. The Romanov Revolution of Hearts is going to be in Touch of Greatness. Joining us mid-tier of our guest teams, top-ish of the Championship, it's Phil Craig.
Happy Christmas. Hello all. Yeah, top 4, I think, at the moment. After a little bit of a wobble, but we were back at it. Came back from 2 goals at the weekend, so quietly confident.
Yes, Sunderland somehow are actually genuinely realistic promotion hopefuls, even at Christmas, which seems unlikely.
I particularly enjoyed meeting you in Sunderland after you caught the second half of the game. The first person I think ever to, as we mentioned in the bar afterwards, to travel all the way from Las Vegas via London to a Sunderland game, missed the first half, see their team lose 2-0. But that's a real supporter, isn't it?
No shots on target of any kind. Or off target, actually. I don't think there was anything off target. No, not target. Phil, what team are you going to be doing tonight?
I'm going to go back a little bit to the 1930s and Arsenal.
And this will be an intriguing Arsenal. This is the Arsenal that will get wrapped up in the Arsenal Stadium mystery. And what's your hunch as to what ranking this team will be?
Well, why not? True greats. Why not? You've seen the film.
And making up our jury this week is on the south coast, not quite at the bottom of the table of teams here, or maybe they are. Briefly, it's Pompey fan Jamie Wilson. Hi, Jamie.
Good evening. Great to be here. How exciting! All five of us on the same pod. Delighted to be here.
It's never been done before. We've had 4 on before. I was on a 4 with 3 Man United fans, and that, as you can imagine, is the reason we've never had more than 3 for a while. And Jamie, what team are you going to go for tonight?
Well, Graham, I think you're going to like this a lot because the amount of shoehorning of Oxford United references throughout the entire podcast you've done, I thought, why not embrace that and pick out Oxford United's greatest ever triumph? So I'm going to look at the 1986 Milk Cup win.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
A team of legends. Dare I ask where you think they should be ranked?
Wow, this is intriguing because I was just going to reference Mr. Rooney here because the lowest rank you have is blinkered greats, isn't it? Am I right in saying that?
We do have another category, but which we created accidentally when we were doing a couple of teams at the start, which is they're not great, but without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I think it's fully up for consideration for this particular team you're going to cover, Jamie.
Well, can I suggest a couple of other levels for you, Jamie? Because I saw blinkered greats, I'm thinking racehorses where they blinkered it out a little bit. So I thought of Gabrielle greats where you close one eye and put an eye patch on it, or pirated greats. And then I thought of another level because I didn't think that quite fitted, and it's called the Stevie Wonder greats. So, it's for me, if you don't mind, just for this Christmas edition, can I have the Gabrielle greats and the Stevie Wonder greats? And we can argue the toss as whereabouts they fit within those categories as we get there. And I've got my reasons for it, and we'll get to that.
We've got a lot of ground to get through. Sadly, we may not get to you, Jamie, tonight, but we will see. Before we dive into this, unusually, I managed to crowbar a reference of Oxford's famous supporter, Timmy Mallett, into the previous pod, and it's been pointed out to me. Timmy Mallett is one of those. So he also appears to be quite a big Maidenhead United fan. I mean, only in that context are Oxford his glamour club pick. Jamie, any South Coast, Jamie, that is, of course, any big Pompey, celebrity Pompey fans?
We used to have Anthony Mingelis, who was the very famous director.
Yeah.
Who sadly passed on, but he was a big fan. But our most, well, there's a couple of other ones very quickly. Ian Darke, the commentator. I actually walked past Ian Darke a couple of weeks ago at Fratton Park, and we had the moment where we looked each other in the eye, and he looked at me to say, "Please don't say you, Ian Darke. Can we talk?" And we had a moment, and then I continued to walk past him, but he was at the game. I saw him, and of course Fred Dinage. Was a very famous supporter and director for a time. But that's about as good as I can get off the top of my head right now.
Phil, for Sunderland, Steve Cram, surely.
The Jarrow Arrow, or Jarrah Arrow, as they kind of say in the northeast, was, I mean, coming from Jarrow, that's kind of quite brave, actually, isn't it? Lauren Laverne, probably lead singer of Kaniki, but probably better known for Desert Island Discs nowadays. Probably more of our demographic now, Desert Island Discs, rather popular music back in the day. Yeah.
But I do have a Kaniki album, actually, bizarrely, but there you go. I quite like them.
Yeah, they're good.
Everton. Well, I mean, big club, so you have quite a few to choose from, I guess.
Yeah, from the absolute upper echelons of society, obviously, Fab Macker himself, Paul McCartney,
Of course.
apparently an Evertonian. He was at the '68 Cup final. Supposedly, Sylvester Stallone is an Evertonian, but I think that might have been because he filmed the Rocky film at Goodison Park. They dolled him up at all the stuff, and he still maintains it as an Evertonian. I think Bill Kenwright just sort of dragged him out on the pitch and he waved a bit and went, "What the hell's going on here?" But I was just thinking, actually, someone I bumped into IKEA many years ago because he got ahead of me to buy the last Billy wardrobe that I was after. And that's Ed Stewpot Stewart, sadly no longer with us.
Oh, is that Crackerjack?
Where he was a...
Yeah.
Yeah, he did Crackerjack, yeah.
Oh, well, you won a cabbage as a booby prize,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, he was at Everton, despite coming from down the West Country somewhere. But yeah, he was an Everton supporter, so yeah.
I like that. Did Billy Wardrobe play out front with Billy Whitehurst?
Terrible.
And
It really
did-
is pantomime season, isn't it? Good grief.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's enough. We should get into this. We've got a lot to get into. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to hand the floor, first of all, I think, to Jamie Rooney. I think we will start off with San Marino. We're going to try and give you 5 minutes or so to make your opening case, and then we'll see how this works. Then the Q&A can begin. Go on, Jamie, you have the floor.
Yeah, so San Marino 2024, an absolute touch of greatness, shoe-in for my money. San Marino historically have been ranked the worst international football team in its history since it first began playing international football in 1990. And they historically have never been able to win international football matches. However, and just to kind of be very clear, San Marino is a population. For those who don't know, it's a republic that's surrounded by Italy in the northern part, Emilia-Romagna, and overlooks Rimini. And it's a population of 33,000 people. And just to contextualize that, that's the size of Abingdon in Oxford, who play in the 10th tier of the English football pyramid. Here we have an international football team that's the equivalent in size of population to a regional football team in Oxfordshire, a team that probably considers Oxford United their greatest rival. And in terms of size of the country, it's the fifth smallest country in the world. So these really are the Davids in the international Goliath world. So just to kind of take you back a bit, their first 64 games, actually their first 68 games, they never won a single football match. I think they drew 2. One of those draws was against Turkey in 1993. A commendable draw, actually. It was a qualifier for the World Cup finals going to the USA, and they drew 0-0 with Turkey. And it's also the same year that you probably remember, some of you, that David Galatasaray scored what was then the fastest ever international goal against England. And I think the greatest thing about that for me is that the brilliant commentator, Jonathan Pearce, you guys will know Jonathan Pearce, he's been around for some time. In the early 90s, he was doing radio for Capital Gold. So Capital Radio in London, they had like Capital Gold, which would then cover international football matches and London football matches. And he is setting up the game, and the goal is so quick, he doesn't even have a chance to finish his opening. I don't know if you've ever heard this before. It's absolutely brilliant. He's on Capital Gold Live, and he's basically saying, "Welcome to the Stadio Renata Delara in Bologna to cover the game between San Marino and England on Capital Gold, sponsored by Tennent's Pilsner Lager, a league of their own. And England are a goal down." That's literally his commentary for kicking off the game. He couldn't even get the ad in quick enough for San Marino to grab this goal. So what it did, it propelled San Marino onto the world stage, which is great. Now we know about San Marino. However, they do go 68 games without winning. And then in 2004, they get their first ever win. They beat Liechtenstein, and it sets up a bit of a bromance between these two nations, which I'll go on to cover. They win 1-0, and the future looks rosy. They've won a game after 69 matches. They then go on to lose the next 61 football matches. So again, they are ranked lowest in the world. They're losing 13-0 to Germany. They're losing 8-0 to Ukraine, Belgium, England, Finland, Norway, 10-0 to Poland, Croatia, 11-0 to the Netherlands. They're getting smacked, absolutely spanked by these international football teams. However, they get into 2014 and they get a commendable draw with Estonia. So they've broken the cycle. And you think, finally, San Marino can kick on. But no, they don't. They go back into tie and they then fail to win a football match for 40 games. And then we get into, and I just want to set the context here. So San Marino in their history have played 215 games total. They've won 3, they've drawn 11, they've lost 201. Their win ratio is 1.4% in the history of this incredible nation that plays football. So we get to September 2024. It's the UEFA Nations League, and we can talk about that maybe separately in terms of the reasons why I think that is a brilliant football tournament for UEFA teams. And they beat Liechtenstein again. They're in a competitive game. It's their first ever competitive win. They win 1-0. They then lose their next 3 games. And then their last 2 fixtures, they draw 1-1 with Gibraltar. 3 days later, they go and take on Liechtenstein again in Liechtenstein. They go a goal down, and you'd think the script is exactly as it's going to be. But hold on. The wind of change. And San Marino come back. And not only do they come back, but they turn the game around and they win the game 3-1. It's their first ever away win. It's the first time. There's so many firsts on this. It's their first competitive win in an away match. The first time they've actually scored more than 2 goals in a game. They did it once before they scored 2 goals. And it's the first time they've come from behind. Their win ratio this season, San Marino, I'll get my stats out. They've played 6. They've won 2. They've drawn 1. They've scored 5 against 6. Their win ratio right now is 33.3%. I mean, the pursuit of happiness has never been more apt than for San Marino. They have been absolutely battered their whole existence. And now they are winning football matches on a regular basis. Not only that, they've been promoted to UEFA Nations League C, the League C, which is the 3rd tier. So they're out of the bottom tier. And this is the great bit, there's a chance, it's complex, but there's a chance that San Marino just may qualify for the World Cup in 2026. This, my friends, this is a touch of greatness.
Win ratio 30%. I mean, how might they? I mean, how realistic is it that they could qualify?
I think it's less than 33.3%. The way that the UEFA Nations League is structured is that if you win the group, not only do you get promoted into the next bracket, the next league, you also get a qualification into the World Cup playoffs should you not qualify for the World Cup by right. So the chances are San Marino aren't going to qualify by right, but because they're in as a group winner in the Nations League, there's a chance they could qualify, play a one-off semi-final, and if they were to win that, and they would be playing against pretty decent opposition, I think it's fair to guess, they will then go into a one-off final, which if they were to win that, they would qualify as right as one of the 16 teams that would be going to the United States, Canada and Mexico in 2026. It's a slim hope, it's a bob hope, but it's not a no hope.
Whenever I think of teams like San Marino, of course, the starting point you can't help but think it is, if the 5 of us were living in San Marino, how many of us, I mean, I think you'd back it yourselves to make the squad, at least the squad, wouldn't you, at some point?
Well, it is a team of part-timers. There are no professionals.
There'd be real incentive to try and get a little bit fitter to play international football.
I think the gap between the worst teams in Europe and the best teams of Europe is smaller now than it's ever been before. And I think we're seeing that because San Marino are able to compete. San Marino's record against Liechtenstein is fantastic. The 2 teams have played each other 8 times. They've both won 3 games. They've both drawn 2 games, and they've both scored 8 goals against each other. I mean, it is sheer perfection as a record. I mean, San Marino Liechtenstein is where it's going on. This is the fixture you need to be watching the next time the UEFA Niche is going on.
Phil, Jamie, Declan, any of you convinced by Jamie's arguments?
I was quite intrigued by the away game against Gibraltar, if only because an away game in Gibraltar can't be easy, given that it's a rock and it's kind of there was very many playing football on. And then I thought, San Marino, they could get to the World Cup finals. Why not? Maybe
There's a chance. There's a chance.
I guess everything is context, isn't it? So if you're a Darlington supporter, you kind of think back to a certain time when you managed to make it into what would have been Division 3, League 2, and that was the kind of the highlight, and those players are stars. And for that cohort of supporters, they are really big. Oxford in the 1980s might be a similar equivalent, but for them, they are stars, and
Jamie, do you mind reminding me again where you were going to pitch them in the greatness levels?
Well, I have been quite reserved.
I mean, I've given you some additional categories to go for here as a Christmas special. I just wanted to hear again where you were going to pitch the team that's beaten Liechtenstein twice. Is that? Did I get that right?
Jamie, you have. I mean, we're talking about a team who's held their own against Liechtenstein.
We're talking about one of the teams, one of the most informed teams in UEFA international football right now, with a 33.3% win ratio. Yeah, I was being quite reserved about how I was pitching them, really, because I just thought it'd be unfair to leave it completely closed off that you guys can't debate that they need to be in a higher bracket. So I've gone for what I consider to be probably the lowest possible one, which is the third tier, touch of greatness. And then I just kind of leave it to the floor to kind of promote them into the all-time greats with the great Manchester United 1998-99.
Nothing further to add, Your Honour, from my side here.
I mean, if nothing else, it is definitely a story of persistence, isn't it? I mean,
it's the pursuit of happiness. It is. I mean, all you need is Will Smith to play the key role, and then you've got the whole kind of thing put together. I mean, it's not the first movie we're going to talk about tonight, is it?
There's a guy on YouTube called the Tim Traveller, and he does a lot of visits places all around Europe, some of the more unconventional tourist traps. And he had a series of films from San Marino, and on one of them, on one of this first series he did, he went to see one of the games thinking, this could be it. This could be the first time they'll win. Because he was saying that going to see the second worst team in the world. And they're playing Moldova and they lose, obviously. After, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4-0, something like that. But he said the great thing was that they went from being the second worst to the worst from that result. And one of the nice things on that first one he went to as well was he went to queue up for this ticket, but then he said a lady approached him in the queue and said, "Oh, do you want this ticket?" And it turned out that it was actually the mum of one of the players who gave him the ticket.
No, it's too good. Any last reasons or summing up for the jury, Jamie?
Well, I think I've said everything I need to say. I think we've got an informed international football team that's going places, and I'd get a couple of pounds on them if I was a betting man. Getting a couple of pounds on them to probably qualify for the last 8 of the next edition of the World Cup in North America.
As the phrase goes, form is temporary, being crap is permanent. It has to be blinking great. Anyone going to argue a stem from that?
I think that's too high, but yeah, we'll go with it. Christmas.
I do like the new bracket that Jamie's created, the Gabrielle bracket.
The Gabrielle bracket is.
I don't know if it's
excellent.
politically correct. It feels correct, but it just feels also. I don't know. I do like it though. So
depending of your era, you could have Doctor Who.
You could have Doctor Who. Yeah, that's true. One-eyed Willie for those Goonie fans out there.
Sam, we go from the sublime, from the ridiculous to the sublime, or sublime to the ridiculous. I don't really even know what that phrase means. Now we're going to take a little dive down. We're going back in the history books, aren't we? And it's a quite special Arsenal team, and it's an Arsenal team that is gloriously captured on a celluloid.
That's right. Yeah, I'll just walk you through my thinking because I put a lot of thought into this. So I was thinking, obviously, last year, Manchester City became the first club to win 4 English championships in a row. They overtook 4 other brilliant clubs. Huddersfield, the first club to win 3 championships in a row in 1926. Liverpool in 1984. Manchester United twice, first in 2001 and later in 2009. But by far the greatest, Arsenal, treble championship winners in the 1930s. They won in 1933, 1934 and 1935. And there are three reasons why I think this Arsenal team is fabulous team. First, there's the manager, Herbert Chapman. Chapman was clearly a pioneering coach. He'd already won the FA Cup in 1922 with Huddersfield, and the first two of their three championships between 1924 and 1925. He arrived in Arsenal in the summer of 1925 after responding to a job advert in the Athletic News. Interestingly, the application for the position of team manager would be kind of one that should be used by lots of clubs today. It said they were looking for somebody for the position of team manager, a gentleman whose sole ability is to build up a good side, but not depending on the payment of heavy and exorbitant transfer fees. So, there's a few clubs out there, Manchester United included, who might have taken a very similar approach. So there he is, 1925. He's responded, got the job, doubled his wages, which might have been one of the reasons why he left a very successful Huddersfield team. But he was joining a team that had really battled relegation in the last 2 years. So good planner, really good, clever strategic thinker. He started to implement a 5-year plan to turn around the club, with the future success of the club dependent on at least three factors. First, innovative tactics. So Chapman's arrival at Arsenal coincided with changes to the offside law, which reduced the number of defenders required to play an attacker on side from 3 to 2. And this was when Chapman introduced a more attacking WM formation, which we mentioned, I think, in a recent Gran Torino podcast, which was better balanced because there was strong defence through a back three, but you had the ability to release forwards for a rapid attack. Second, Chapman was one of the first coaches to combine this level of organisation with a high level of fitness and even an emphasis on a healthy diet, which helped to shift the game from a traditionally slow-paced possession game that emphasised dribbling to a more exciting counter-attacking game. And third, Chapman built one of the best scouting networks in the country, so he was able to spot and attract the best young talent, including Cliff Baston, the winger who was Arsenal's all-time leading scorer for decades, with 178 goals before being surpassed by Thierry Henry. Alex James, an inside forward, who was a brilliant passer of the ball and able to link up the defence in the midfield and attack through the new WM formation. And the striker Ted Drake, a clinical finisher who scored 42 league goals in the 1934-35 season, which is still a record. And Chapman's impact was immediate. In his first season, Arsenal finished second to Huddersfield. They then went on to win the first FA Cup in 1930 and the first of their league titles in 1931, before finishing runners-up in 1932 to Everton. And they won another league title, first of the three, in 1933. The second reason why I think Arsenal in the 1930s are worth of the title of great is that they completed a hat-trick of league titles after the death of Herbert Chapman in January 1934. So Arsenal were 4 points clear at the top of the league table at New Year 1934. And Chapman decided that he was going to visit Bury and Sheffield Wednesday, who were their next opponents, for a scouting trip. Unfortunately, when he returned to London, the cold that he caught in the north, as we do, turned to pneumonia, and Chapman died on the 6th of January 1934. So first, Joe Shaw stepped in as caretaker manager. He had been reserve team manager. This was a really good choice. He knew the club inside out. He'd played for the club as a left-back for over 300 games before the Great War, and Arsenal just lost twice in their final 17 games of the season, and they won 3 points, again from Huddersfield. But in 1935, Arsenal won a hat-trick of league titles. This time the club was managed by George Allison. We'll come on to him in a minute. Allison was a very different person from Chapman. His background was in journalism and broadcasting. And he let the first team trainer, Tom Whittaker, take charge of everyday training and squad discipline. And at the same time, Allison concentrated on the transfer policy and club relationships with the media. Arsenal's winning streak of league championships only came to an end when they lost out to the great Sunderland team in 1936.
Shut up.
Of course, who became the last team to win the English League while wearing striped jerseys. Key point. But Arsenal did go on to win the FA Cup in 1936 and the league again in 1938. But the third and probably the most important reason is that the Arsenal team of the 1930s, was integral to maybe the first ever film to make football integral to the plot and feature real-life footballers, players and their settings. With the release in 1939, 42 years before Escape to Victory, of the Arsenal Stadium Mystery. This
Not listening. Not
film
listening.
was adapted from a book by the prolific crime writer, you've all heard of him, Leonard Gribble, and directed by the brilliantly named Theobald Dickinson. Now unfortunately neglected, he later directed The Queen of Spades, Secret People, and Hill 24 Doesn't Answer, a drama about the 1947 War of Independence in Israel, and the first Israeli film to be distributed worldwide. Who, and I'm not making this up, I checked it, a number of sources, who a director that Martin Scorsese, no less, later called, quote, one of the most ambitious and talented filmmakers of his time. So there you go. So the story, if you haven't seen it, I'll be surprised. It revolves around a fictional charity match between Arsenal and a fictitious amateur team called the Trojans. During the game, one of the Trojan players, Jack Dice, collapses on the pitch and later dies. It's later discovered that he was poisoned, turning the match into a murder mystery. The investigation is led by Inspector Anthony Slade of the Met, played by Leslie Banks, of course, who delves into the players' lives, uncovering personal rivalries, romantic entanglements, and possible motives for the crime. The first two matches were constructed from footage of an actual game between Arsenal and Brentford, with Brentford recast as the Trojans, and a mock-up match also using the Oxford and Cambridge Blues as the Trojans for the close shots, which do, to be honest, stand out a little bit. The film includes several speaking parts for Tom Whittaker and particularly the manager, George Allison, with both of them playing themselves. And at half-time during the first game, Allison is sitting in the commentary box, not quite clear why, but he's sitting in the commentary box, and his brilliant line is, "It's 1-0 to Arsenal. That's the way we like it," which, of course, lives on, and you can still hear that chant at Arsenal today.
It is a thing of absolute beauty. Like you, I was absolutely mystified as to why George Allison was in the commentary box, seemingly introducing the commentator. It seemed a very unlikely role for the manager. George Allison has, I mean, he's a fascinating character, full stop. But it's not. This isn't a bit part. This isn't like John Walk or Russell Osman in Escape to Victory. I mean, he's a proper lead character.
Yeah.
Jamie, I think you've done some stats on this.
Well, I don't have any stats, but yeah, he's a supporting actor in this particular film. An English football manager of one of the best teams in the country at the time is getting more screen time and more lines than what Dame Judi Dench got in Shakespeare in Love when she won the supporting Oscar. It's incredible the amount of airtime this guy gets. It's just, and he pops up absolutely everywhere. I mean, I have to ask the question though, Phil. Are we ranking the Arsenal 39 team and more pertinently the Arsenal Stadium Mystery that inspired the team, or are we ranking the Herbert Chapman Allison team of the mid-1930s? Because in my tiny little brain, there is a distinction between the two in terms of how I see them both. And you touched on Herbert Chapman's incredible kind of change of football with the WM formation, and that's quite significant in history again. Probably less so than George Allison, drinking brandy, smoking cigars in the commentary box, singing 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Definitely right that Herbert Chapman was a pioneer of the game, and it's actually noticeable in the film that one of the techniques that was introduced by Herbert Chapman is used by George Allison, and that is the metal board. So there's a metal board which Herbert Chapman introduced with counters for each of the players, which Herbert Chapman was would use from the Friday to introduce the tactics that were implemented on the following Saturday, and nobody had ever done that. I think it's certainly true that George Allison's coaching wasn't in the same league as Herbert Chapman, although he could deliver a line very, 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 very well. I'd like to think of the whole story around the 1930s as being kind of the development of the modern Arsenal. Really, they hadn't won a
They were
thing.
useless before that. Yeah, and Herbert Chapman is responsible for Highbury having a tube station name as well. I think is another subject we could possibly talk about at another point.
The
But
Gillespie
there's a
Road.
wonderful point. Yeah, there's Gillespie Road indeed. There's another wonderful point at the start of the film for those who have watched it. Like Graham, I've watched it recently again, and I'm still confused. But at the beginning, where they do the credits, they actually have a nod to the shape and formation because the actors are actually put in a WM formation. Now, there's only 10, so they've left off the goalkeeper. But it's quite aesthetically pleasing to see when they're listing the players that are going to be portrayed in the film in a football formation, in a WM formation, which was quite nice, actually. And that gave it an extra mark. Lost a few marks 5 or 6 minutes into the film, but got off to a good start.
That's the genius of Thorold Dickinson, isn't it?
Can you put the actors into their formation, Jamie?
Well, it was the Arsenal team. Actually, they do present the Arsenal team, and as Phil said, it is literally the Arsenal team. So they are put into the classic 2-3-5 formation. And Phil, you're absolutely right. I do love the magnetic board where he's kind of demonstrating to his players how he wants them to play and how he wants them to defend against his opponent, attack his opponent. That is fantastic. I mean, probably influenced Sabutio, that shot.
One of the explanations for him being in the commentary box was that he was a commentator himself. George Allison was one of the first to kind of commentate on the Grand National and also international games, one of the first to commentate on for the Scotland-England home international. So it's rather a curious journey that he took from broadcasting into general management before stepping into Herbert Chapman's shoes eventually. Very, very, very strange. There's a couple of other little curiosities I thought in the film, which I'll need to add to Internet Movie Database at some point. It occurs to me that in the main female protagonist's house, there seems to be a picture of Karl Marx up on the wall. If you go back and see it on YouTube, it does look, I've watched it a number of times, and it does look like Karl Marx. And then later on, and this is the quality of the film, there's a very humorous moment involving a frog, which involves one of the sergeants making a Hitler salute while the inspector puts a brush in front of his nose, making him look like Hitler just weeks, maybe months before the outbreak of the Second World War. It was ahead of its time.
Freddie Starr obviously watched that when he was growing up. I mean, George Allison's Wikipedia page is fantastic. It's just the way it's written. There's a bit in there. It says like, after a chance encounter with Lord Kitchener before the 1911 coronation of King George V. A chance encounter with Lord Kitchener? What kind of life was he leading?
He got around, didn't he? He definitely got around.
I think I am with Jamie. I think there's probably two teams here, and I think this is probably the George Allison era, which does achieve something truly great, which is that very first film appearance of a side. And actually, as you say, Phil, I'm glad you explained why, because they actually, it's pioneering in many ways, because it's probably got the best football coverage or a recreation that has ever been put on in cinema. And then it also has some of the worst, which they are then to follow in a series of football films, which is consistently, a director at some point has always said, tell you what would be good. We need the star person to run all the way from their own half all the way through to the opposition. And if people just fall out of the way as if they're making tackles.
Yeah, they're the slightly less convincing parts of the film. But there's lovely touches. The inspector in every scene has a different hat. It's just little touches like that just make the film.
I have to say, I think it's quite an odd film. I don't think it quite knows what it is.
It's complex, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, where would you go? What's your hunch on ranking this side? If we slightly detach it from, I suppose we're talking probably from Alisson taking over, maybe.
Well, I think what Phil's done very brilliantly is set himself up to guest on another episode in 2025 to talk about the Arsenal 1930s team. So I absolutely fully commend him for that. I mean, there's a man who knows how to get gigs. But I don't think that's the team we're ranking. I do think we're ranking George Allison's Arsenal team. I think we're ranking George Allison as a football manager and an actor. So that's what I'm going for. And I don't think this is anything more than I think this is a bit of blinkered greats, isn't it? I mean, Arsenal don't even achieve anything. I have to be honest. I do love the 1930s for films. I mean, this was made at Denham Studios, and it was made in the same time that the Goodbye Mr. Chips film, the brilliant Robert Donat film, was made. And I just feel that in that era, that was a marked quality in terms of filmmaking than the Martin Scorsese influenced Theodore Dickinson blinkered greats. I'll start with, and I'll let Deck and other Jamie guide you.
I read somewhere that the some of the footage that the actual in-play footage was taken from the last game of the 1939 season, and it's actually against Brentford.
Did
I read that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Who won the league in 1938-39?
Oh,
they've all got a bloody angle.
Yeah, it's
beautiful. That's wonderfully segued in there.
Next, Jamie's going to say who won the FA Cup.
And held on to the league for 6 years as well.
Got to take your victories where you can get them. Yeah, anytime there's a World War, Everton are there. But yeah, in terms, right, okay, got to rank them. It's got to be blinkered greatness, this, hasn't it? Watch the film with one eye.
Jamie, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, well, firstly, Phil, it makes me look like I haven't done enough research for my segment on Oxford United, so I feel slightly like the kid who's turned up to the test and hasn't really done anything. But I think we can have fun at Graham's expense at my lack of knowledge on the Milk Cup. We'll get to that later. But no, I think joking aside, yeah, I can't. I mean, I love the fact that the manager's an actor and vice versa, but so I'm going to have to go with the blinkered greats thing as well, I think.
So I'm just going to put, just to put some context on this, Rotten Tomatoes has the Arsenal Stadium mystery at 54%. So that is absolutely touch of greatness, surely. Absolutely middle ground. Graham Greene, in his review in The Spectator, wrote, the explanation of the murder depends on another death outside of the story in a coroner's report, and Mr. Dickinson's skill is never more evident than in his grim, sad dramatisation of the dull typewritten pages. Don't know if you got that.
Don't give away the ending, Graham. The issue with a pot of... Why in a trainer's room is there a pot full of horse's hair? It becomes central to the plot. It's not. I'm still not quite clear about that.
Yes, I think. If we're just taking this as I think there's a case actually for the Arsenal Stadium mystery side for us to be saying actually ranking them as not necessarily great, but without them we wouldn't be where we are today, because I think it is the forerunner of Escaped Victory and countless other football documentaries. So surely that in itself is... That's your line, Jamie. I always do it.
That's good.
So I think maybe that's where we settle with for that. But I can't recommend that you watch that film enough. If you haven't already, it is odd. There's no other word for it. It is absolutely all over the place.
And I take great pleasure from the fact that by suggesting this, you've wasted 1 hour, 22 minutes of your life by watching the movie on YouTube.
Well, who hasn't wasted 1 hour, 22 minutes of their life watching Arsenal?
Oh, too good, too good. Excellent. Okay. So, Dec, let's have a look at you. So, you are taking us to, well, Merseyside's biggest club, I guess.
The biggest club on the world, yeah.
To see, aren't they Birkenhead?
Oh, yeah, oh.
They are indeed. So for anyone not familiar with the geography, Birkenhead is just opposite Liverpool on the Mersey. You go a little bit further south and you get to Prenton Park. They started in 1884 as Belmont FC, an amalgamation of two cricket clubs, bizarrely. But they moved to Prenton Park in 1895. They reached the big time, by which I mean Division 3 North, in 1921. And they are quite the draw. They it's one of the fascinating what-ifs that we're going to touch on here. Had they actually reached the top flight and there'd been 3 Merseyside derbies, how this would have panned out. They did play a cup game against Liverpool at Anfield in 1934 and drew 61,000 spectators. So they were something of a draw. Most of this time and most of the time they've been in existence, really, they've sort of bumbled along, bounced along Division 2, Division 3. They had a little purple patch in the 70s when Ron Yates came in. But by the time that, obviously, the Merseyside clubs were dominating football, Tranmere were having a horrible old time of it, and they actually went into administration. It got to the point where they were nearly going to have to sell Prenton Park just to pay off debts and stuff. They were absolute shambles. This is the point where the saviour comes in. I have to say, through gritted teeth. The chairman and the doyen of Park Foods Limited, Park Hampers, you've heard of those, Mr. Peter Johnson, who will come on to why I'm sort of saying this through gritted teeth later, obviously. But he comes in, rescues the club, and he brings in as manager Johnny King. And in his second spell as manager, and he starts to build a team of not absolute top flight professionals, but steady, really a good workman-like side and give a good account of itself. And he builds quite a big squad, and it's got names in it that familiar to. So you got people like Neil McNabb, who played for City, and he played for Spurs. You've got people like Ian Nolan, who went to Sheffield Wednesday later, had a good career there. So you got players of that sort of rank. You had their good keeper and Eric Nixon. What actually happens then is they bring in John Aldridge, another name, as I say, through gritted teeth, and Pat Nevin, who I've got all the time in the world for, obviously. But they do make the difference, and they've got quite an exciting front line then. So they've got Aldridge, who's obviously come off the back of a spell at Real Sociedad. And he's picked up a few tricks while he's been there, including their interesting run-ups towards penalties, which, sometimes the referees will let them get away with it and sometimes they wouldn't. So, there was that to his game. He was also, he'd also acquired a bit of snide. I mean, he had that with Liverpool. But he sort of honed his snide skills at Sociedad. But alongside him, he had the big fella, really good forward as well, called Chris Malkin. He was sort of the big target man. And he had 2 excellent wide men with them. So he had Pat Nevin, obviously, who, we absolutely brilliant ball playing, really skillful, fantastic, quick. Not big, not the biggest, but just, we're talking Division 1, and he's come from Everton, so that's the sort of level he's playing at. And also on the other side is John Morrissey Jr., who was the son of the Everton winger Johnny Morrissey, and again, really good, skillful player. So they were playing effectively with 4 forwards. This kind of set the pattern because they would win an awful lot of games. I mean, from the off, they'd nearly got relegated in 91-92, but they just came absolutely out of the traps in 92-93 and just won and won and won and won. And it was only really that they had a little bit of as tends to happen, they had a little bit of a stumble in I think, Feb, and then they had another stumble in March where they lost quite a few games, and that sort of put them out of the promotion running, really, that season, the automatic promotion places. But they still managed to make it to the playoffs, which, given where they were only a couple of seasons before, is an absolutely astonishing achievement, really, to be knocking on the door of the Premier League. And they get to the playoff semis, and they eventually lose to Swindon Town. And I think that was Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was Glenn Hoddle Swindon Town at the time when he was playing sweeper for them. And that's one of the big what ifs, because they actually spent a couple of seasons in the top flight, didn't they?
Mm.
So had may have got on top of then and come up, would they have just dropped like a stone again? But I don't think they would. I think they would have. I think they could have held their own for a few seasons.
They couldn't have done any worse than Swindon, by the way.
Well, no.
Who, from memory, I think, got the record lowest points tally ever.
Yeah, I think
until Derby came along a few years later.
That's true, yeah.
11 points, Derby.
But one of the things I'm just looking at it as well is a long-forgotten thing from that season, which didn't really have any impact on the form because it was actually when they were having the sort of purple patch at the start of the season. But they played in something called the Anglo-Italian Cup, if you remember that.
We do remember that.
So there's basically a little sort of round-robin tournaments against teams from not the upper echelons of the English and the Italian leagues. So they had a little sojourn in that, where they had a decent record, actually. They had a draw against Peterborough, beat Wolves, draw against Reggiana away, lost to Cremonese, and then won the last two games against the might of, never even heard of them, Cosenza 1914 and Pisa FC. So yeah, they've had a near miss that season, and then the next season they do it again. They come out of the traps. They're doing really, really well. They're actually top of the league at the start of the season. I think 7 games in the top of the league. Mid-December they go top again, and it's at this point where they sort of have a little wobble again, and that drops them out to the automatic promotion places again. What they do this season is they actually reach the semis of the Coca-Cola Cup, having got rid of Grimsby, Oldham and Forest along the way. They come up eventually against Villa. They actually win the first leg 3-1. I remember Pat Nevin talking about this, and he'd actually said that goal, I don't recall it, but a Villa goal was it was fortunate. And he said that it was playing at the back of the minds that a 3-0 win, they would have been unimpeachable, but 2, they felt that Villa would always have a chance. And so it proves. They go to Villa, get so close. They are so close. They're 2-0 up, and then Aldridge is through on goal, and Bosnich comes out and takes him down. These days, it's an absolute clear sending off. And why the referee didn't send him off is anyone's guess, but he didn't. So Bosnich survived. Aldridge slotted a penalty, but then Villa scored again 2 minutes from the end. So it's level. It's 4-4 on aggregate. Even then, Liam O'Brien has one off the line. It hits the post, rolls along the line and comes back out. So it's virtually the last kick of the game. I mean, it's just basically the story of them. But they go on to lose the penalty shootout. It's 4-4, and then Nolan misses one, and I think O'Brien missed one as well. Villa go through. So it's really, they've had a cruel stroke of luck there. They finish 5th. They go out to Leicester City in the semis, and Leicester City end up getting promoted in the stead. That's the end of it. Do we think? Nope. Next season, and again, exactly the same. Come out of the traps, have an absolutely terrific run, do really, really well. And again, it's just a little wobble towards the end of the season. They start losing games in March and they start losing them in April. And it's that little wobble that takes them out of the promotion places again. So it's just really, really unfortunate. I mean, they had a pretty good defence as well. It's just really unfortunate, these little wobbles that just sort of derailed them at the end of every season.
It was a weird little period, wasn't it, where Tranmere were just consistently on the fringes, and they're having a series of sort of big games.
They were knocking on the door, and all this while they were playing the games on a Friday as well.
Of course, yes.
Saints and Greaves used to call them the Friday night favourites. Well, sorry, all the home games on a Friday, because obviously if Everton or Liverpool were playing, then Merseyside Police wouldn't stretch to like doing two on a weekend. So yeah, they have to play on the Friday a lot of the games. But yeah, they're just a club for that size to be knocking on the door of the big boys from just such an inauspicious period of where they were only a few years earlier.
Three playoffs in a row they made in the what we call the Championship now. They were finishing in the top 5, a team that's never even competed in the second tier. They go straight in and they just absolutely smash it. And you're right, they are on the edges of getting into the Premier League. And just to kind of relive a Millwall stat, Graham, from the Millwall podcast we did a few weeks back, where we talked about Millwall spending, I think, 2% of their entire history in the top tier. Now, Tranmere have never been in the top tier, but they have pretty much spent most of their time in the bottom 2 tiers. They had one fleeting season in 1939 when they got into the second tier. Maybe they were inspired by some of the movies that are out that particular year, and they kind of thought that they could achieve great things from that. But it's just one season. But the 8 seasons that they do spend in the second tier during this period represents 13% of their whole existence. So, and it's the only time they've actually featured in the top tier. So it's a special occasion for Tranmere Rovers with some special players. I mean, Pat Nevin I agree with you, Dec. I mean, he's kind of reinvented football punditry when he first started being a pundit, because he tried to break down some of the stereotypical barriers that you kind of are connected with football players talking about anything other than just football. I mean, just talking about general things, politics, music, which Pat Nevin can do quite easily. Great players, but it's a great period in Tranmere Rovers. And one again, Graham, like the great Arsenal team that Phil talked about, that is worth maybe a little bit of further discussion. But for the moment, we're just kind of ranking it on this brief introduction that Dec's given us.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is of course worth. I do have to just say a few words about John Aldridge, who is just extraordinary. So his scoring record is just unbelievable, and he ends up playing the most games he plays for anyone for Tranmere. He's 243 games. He scores 138 goals, I think, for them, and he makes his debut for them as a 32-year-old. This is like, he's already achieved true extraordinary things in his career. He's won everything there is to win at the Manor Ground. So there's some motivation for you, having achieved everything there is to achieve in the game. By the time you finish your third year at Oxford, where do you go from there? And there he is, a decade later. Just stupid, in that first season, he scores 40 goals as a 32-year-old. It is,
Wow.
and that he's just. I think it's difficult to imagine a sort of another player having quite such a prolonged twilight period. I mean, Jamie, you've seen it at Portsmouth with kind of Merson and Sheringham dropping down a level and sort of showboating their way through the Championship. But they were relatively brief spells there, weren't they, for those players?
Yeah, it was just a season for those guys. But no, hats off to Aldridge, of course, and we will come on to him again very shortly, which I'm looking forward to.
I mean, I think that you called it just right with that edge of greatness. Having not got promoted, having not quite got to the final of the cup, it just feels like you can't really go beyond that.
After this period, what happened then was Peter Johnson, I think, just got a bit fed up of trying to get him into the Premier League, and he went, "Oh, Everton are for sale. Why don't I go over there and buy them?" And obviously you can't have 2 clubs and that, so there was a bit of chicanery going on. But he took over at Everton and started Everton's long decline. Well, Tranmere themselves, Aldridge took over the manager's job at that point. They bumbled along sort of mid-table, so usually around about 11th, 14th, something like that. Then in 2000, they actually reached the League Cup final. Unfortunately, they lost it. Really unluckily, actually, they lost it to Leicester. It was actually the last League Cup final, I believe, played at Wembley as well, the old Wembley.
The old Wembley, yeah.
So again, they were still giving a good account of themselves. I think it was after that the wheels really did start to fall off for them, but not before they. They actually got relegated from Division 1 that season, but not before they played Everton in the cup and beaten them 3-0 at Goodison.
Okay, unless anyone thinks otherwise, I think we're going to park Tranmere Rovers in the edge of greatness category. So yes, we're now on to the brilliant Heart of Midlothian 2005-06. And Deck, this is I love that you mentioned that you can't run two clubs at the same time. That wasn't an issue for Vladimir Romanov, who appeared to have his hand in Lithuanian club Kaunas as well as Hearts, and this is just an unbelievable story. And the reason such it being a lovely journey down memory lane, the reason I sort of would put it forward for touch of greatness is this Heart side managed to break the stranglehold Celtic and Rangers, the old firm, have on the Scottish League at this stage. And they managed to do it through unprecedented dysfunction. I mean, it is the most successful functional club I think there has ever been. And this season in particular, Romanov is a Russian-Lithuanian businessman. He emerges, and I think all of us at one point or another have been at a club where a white knight appears to rescue us from various disasters. And I think what's interesting in Romanov is that he kind of sort of does deliver, whilst obviously ultimately delivering Hearts to an inevitable administration. So yeah, at the time he takes over, there's a genuine move that Hearts might have to. There's an agreement to sell Tynecastle. They're going to move to play at Murrayfield, and him arriving keeps Hearts at Tynecastle. So there's a big initial wave of success. And he comes in and brings in George Burley as manager. A really great appointment. They're also helped by a ruling which means that at the Scottish League at the time, you were allowed to basically loan in as many players as you liked, as long as they weren't from Scottish clubs. So 8 loanees come in, 6 of them from Lithuania. They include the incredible Rudy Skacel, who is who turns out to be an amazing success. Skacel, in fact, scores in his first 7 games for Hearts. Hearts win their first 8 league games. They go unbeaten in 10 games. They draw 1-1 with Celtic in their 10th game. And the obvious thing to do at that point is to get rid of George Burley. So nobody quite knows. Even now, it's all covered by an NDA. Embarrassing. Nobody ever seems to have talked about it. There were various suggestions that Romanov was perhaps overstretching his role in terms of signing players, in terms of picking players potentially. And George Burley leaves. The chief executive who brings him in goes shortly after. Phil Anderton, he's sacked. The chairman, George Folks, who brought in Romanov, he resigns in protest of those various changes. And Hearts would appear to be in turmoil. Now, there's a lot of talk at this point as to what they will do to replace George Burley. They are top of the league. They are riding high. Romanov has money to all intents and purposes. There's lots of talk of a big name that's going to come in, and it's at this point that Hearts bring in Graham Rix. Now, Graham Rix at this point has who had a very impressive reputation while coach of Chelsea. That went slightly downhill, and after a short prison sentence. But, Graham Rix had sort of made efforts to sort of restore his reputation in the game and continue as a manager. He had short-lived spells as manager of, let me see, who did he manage, Jamie?
I seem to recall him managing Portsmouth very badly for a couple of seasons. I actually bumped into Graham Rix as well in a restaurant. And I don't know whether it was my imagination, but he seemed to really be eyeing up my then wife. Well, still wife, I should say, actually. And again, I don't know whether that was just me
viewing it
through the lens of somebody who'd been convicted. But yeah. So anyway, sorry, but yes, yeah. And then I think he went on to manage somebody else, Graham. Am I right?
Yeah. What do you know? He Oxford was so impressed with him. He came in for an underwhelming spell at Oxford too. So by the time Hearts pick him up, it's not obvious.
Two titans of the game. That's right.
Very much so. Two, relatively limited success. So Graham Rix comes in at Hearts, and things start to sort of fall away a little bit there. Graham Rix is there for about 3 or 4 months. He leaves at the point that now I think he is sacked, but at the point he goes, there's very strong suggestions that Romanov is picking the team or picking certain players at that point. Apparently, this came out because a couple of players asked, "Why aren't you being picked?" And Rick said, "Well, I'm not picking the team." So Rix goes in about 4 months. The director of football, Jim Duffy, is sacked as well. He's been there 1 month. Romanov brings in Valdez Ivanauskas, who, of course, cut his teeth at Lithuanian club Kaunas. Unusual to turn to that club for any players whatsoever. And yet, throughout this level of turmoil, and the turmoil just continues as seasons go on, it gets madder and madder. And despite all of this, Hearts are continuing to achieve. So especially Rudy Scatchell is kind of again the key player there, but they have a lot of decent. Craig Gordon, there's some established Scottish internationals: Craig Gordon, Stephen Presley, Webster as well. Peter Hartley, who actually is the top scorer, I think, that season for Hearts. And the season turns into sort of a kind of a perfect story for them because, in the league, Hearts end up finishing second. They're second by quite a long distance from Celtic. But their second place is the first time anyone other than an Old Firm side has finished in the top 10 since 1994-95. They also make it to the Scottish Cup final. Now, if you're a Hearts fan, what would you like more than to have a semi-final against Hibs and to beat Hibs 4-0 in that semi-final to make your way to the final? They probably wish that was the final itself, because the Scottish Cup final they actually do triumph in is a penalties win against Gretna, who I think is the only time they ever make an appearance in the Scottish Cup final. So again, they really struggled their way through that. But again, winning the Scottish Cup, that was the first time a non-Old Firm side had won that too since Hearts in 1997-98. And so this team, throughout all the madness of Romanov, which just continues, even Askus, he ends up going on just medical leave for early in October. Various players, this is the point at which Romanov actually gives a press conference, I think, at which he says that if the team don't beat Dunfermline on Saturday, they'll all be sacked. all moved on. He just spoke wildly from the hip. He got in all kinds of trouble around it. he is an interesting character. He does, as I say, leave them ultimately in administration in 2013. Hearts then have face a 15-point penalty, which means Hearts then face a 15-point penalty, which means they essentially get relegated the following season. And Romanov's career goes on to slightly ever stranger things. He forms a political party in Lithuania and successfully gains less than 1% of the vote. And he also more successfully wins Lithuania's version of Dancing with the Stars, or Strictly Come Dancing. So, I mean, obviously, I don't have enough time to tell you everything about the glorious Romanov. I'll just add one last thing. Really, Scatchell, who is obviously had a lot of time for a very entertaining player. He actually left after one season. He was on loan with Cairns, went down to Southampton, but he does then return and spends 2 years at Hearts. During that, actually, with great success. He's top scorer in both seasons, and his last game is another Scottish Cup final victory where they beat Hibs 5-1, and Scatchell scores twice. Now, Scatchell, it looks like he's going to stay. He doesn't. He goes to join Dundee United, where he takes the shirt number 51. Ultimate trolling. Without a doubt, Hearts, that for breaking the old firm monopoly, they have to be a touch of greatness.
Touch of greatness is really interesting. I mean, what's more interesting is that how important is the football manager in certain circumstances of a football club? The fact that you can rotate the manager 4 times in a single season and still win a cup and still break up the duopoly of the great Celtic and Rangers, it does beg the question. It kind of reminds me a little bit, to bring you in, Phil, when we talked about the great Torino team, where we talked about Ernie Erbstein. I hope I got that right this time. Right. And also Ferruccio Novo, who, again, they were controlling parties in the football club. They weren't the manager, but they were very much hands-on in terms of how the team kind of presented and portrayed itself.
That's certainly true. But with Romanov, he took that type of approach in a slightly different direction. Am I right in thinking that for team selection, he suggested or used a clairvoyant, and he was heavily influenced by an external expert who apparently could predict the players' injuries by reading their palms. So he exercised his control in many and various ways. And the other interesting aspect of this was, I wondered if this was a deliberate segue in terms of financial irregularities between Hearts under Romanov and Oxford under Robert Maxwell. Classically, I think Romanov, he kind of was one of the early oligarchs, wasn't he? And made a lot of money. Embezzled, apparently. I don't think he's going to sue us. Embezzled a huge amount of money and now finds himself on the outskirts of Moscow, as you know, many and various dictators and embezzlers do, it seems, this time of year.
So I'm going to play the Graham card at the moment. So as you've kind of stated your case, Jamie, Deck, where are you? Touch of greatness, Hearts?
I used to work at a Strand around all this time, and there was a guy who used to go to this bar, and there's a guy who used to come in who was a Hearts fan. And every time we walked in, I'd just laugh at him, because it's like, what the bloody hell is going on now? And he's just like shaking his head going, I don't know. It's just like, just the same, throw his hands up like, I have no idea. No one's got any idea. But yeah, I mean, if we were talking comedy, great, then I mean, this is all. I mean, this is Steptoe and Son level, isn't it? It's like Father Ted level. It's bonkers. Yeah, I think if you look at a maelstrom there of everything's going on, they actually, as you say, Graham, break the duopoly. Although, in fairness, Rangers at that point where go to win a trophy, albeit against Gretna, you've got to throw your hands up and say, yeah, there's a little touch of greatness there, just for the memories.
Yeah, I've got to agree, and I almost love the fact that the Rangers are poor and it's Gretna they beat in the final. I think it just adds to the joyous craziness of it all. So yeah, I agree. Touch of greatness.
Stick up for Gretna a little bit, and I think at the time they were being bankrolled by, I think it was Brooks Milson. He of Sunderland fame, Phil. I'm pretty sure he's from that particular area. And he'd found a lot of money into Gretna, and Gretna were actually going places at that time. So it kind of is a joke that they made the cup final and Hearts had to beat them on penalties. But Gretna at the time were actually movers and shakers in the Scottish Football League system. And also just to kind of point out, I don't know if Romanoff is the craziest owner. Palermo, who play in Italy, they had an owner called Maurizio Zamparini, and he made 8 managerial changes in the 2015-16 season, of which one of them, Giuseppe Inanacci, was actually sacked twice in the same season. Same football club. So as bonkers as it is with Romanoff, there's always something a bit more bonkers out there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
that is too good. That is too good. Excellent. Okay. Well, I enjoyed that a lot. It's very kind of Jamie to sort of take me back to a happy place. And, and I'm sure that's your intention here is to, emphasize the positives of, what is, we're at True Touch Greats. I think we're about to go higher.
Hold on. Before Jamie starts, I just got to find my popcorn. I put it here somewhere.
Well, I think the rest of the panel can make their own mind up on this. If just bear with me for 10 seconds, would you? Just carry on talking amongst yourselves. Just bear with me a second.
And we are in the festive period, and this is very much pantomime season has begun with Jamie as it's slightly alarmed what might be coming.
So I hope you can see that all right. So in honour of the great Oxford United shirt, I managed to make my own version, which I think there's a career in this. So anyway, that feels better. That feels quite comfy.
I have to highly commend you, Jamie. That's fantastic. When you went off, I was desperately hoping in my head it was going to be another Thames Valley Royal moment. For those of you who can remember, a costume change midway through the podcast, and you haven't disappointed. Thank you so much.
Well, I think you've got to get into the zone with these things. And
that's a brilliant horse you've drawn there.
I'm particularly proud of that, actually. I mean, that's my 4th try. That's how good my art skills are. So, without further ado, I'm going to cut to the chase on this. So, of course, I'm doing Oxford United, but I'm arrowing in on that 1986 Milk Cup winning side. And as I said before, I reviewed the game, and I just felt we needed another level, and I'll explain why. So anyway, I'm going to go with my Gabrielle Greats here. So an eye patch, one eye missing, wherever you want to swing it. So let's just take you back. So 38 years ago, and again, the good thing is, Graham, I've got you here to back me up on all my facts and to add the depth and the detail to it. So 38 years ago, Oxford United achieved their single greatest result in the club's history as they beat Queen's Park Rangers 3-0 at Wembley to lift the League Cup. Now, what I loved, there's a line here that I got, I think it was from the Oxford United blog around the game, and I quote, Oxford United have achieved many great things. I think that's a line up for debate, which we can come back to in a minute. So anyway, let's go with it. Oxford United have achieved many great things, but arguably the Milk Cup final of 1986 is the greatest game of them all. I just want to pause and let a bit of that sink in. They've achieved many great things.
Many great things. Many.
Anyway, moving swiftly on. This was their first, and I believe only major honour so far. Graham, again, keep me honest here. We're not including EFL Cups here, by the way. We're talking major honours. I think this is.
I think in 1986 07, I think we won the indoor
Go Anglo.
indoor six-a-side tournament. Force got the winner. In fact, quite an impressive breakthrough moment. It never. The Soccer Sixes, I think it was called. Highly successful, very impressive, impressive moment. No,
Again, I think that answers my question succinctly. So anyway, we get to the cup final, and what's great about this, and again, I went down. It's terrible to say, but I went a bit of a rabbit hole as I watched ITV coverage on this. So, and it's well worth a look. A bit like the Arsenal Magical Mystery Tour film that that Phil was talking about earlier. So the ITV coverage had Jim Rosenthal, who I believe, Graham's a big Oxford United fan. Am I correct in saying that?
you are indeed. Yeah, you are indeed. Although, he was on the board for a period in time. He has gone to Northampton slightly, sadly now, which is a bit depressing. Following Timmy Mallett, and
He really isn't a glory hunter, is he?
Anyway, what gave it away that Jim was a big Oxford United fan is he's wearing the most enormous Oxford United rosette as he hosts the programme. I mean, it is enormous. It's not subtle, like my cow here. So you've got Jim Rosenthal, a huge Oxford United fan, and on that pundit panel you had. We'll get to the game in a minute, but this is good. So you had Mick Shannon, who was currently playing for Portsmouth. He's the most Southampton icon you could ever get. But he played one season at Pompey, and he's on the panel. He's alongside Saint and Greavesy. So, and what I loved is Jim asked Ian St John and Greavesy who they think's going to win, and Ian St John says, "I think QPR will win simply because they have more class players." Honest from St John. And Greavesy says, "I don't really give a monkeys who wins." I just don't think you can get away with that these days. And he says it straight faced, and then he realizes kind of what he said, and then he just said, "I'm just hoping for a really open, good game of football," and tries to back it up. Though. So anyway, we've got it teed up beautifully, and there's 90,396 in attendance, which is great, and I'm assuming Graham Oxford gates of 45,000 now, considering you had half the stadium at Wembley full that day. So anyway, a huge crowd. It's the first live broadcast the club has been involved in. So you're playing against a QPR team which has the likes of Terry Fenwick, Martin Allen, Michael Robinson up front. So it's a reasonable side, and then we get to the Oxford side. So what I love about the Oxford team, there's a 4-4-2 setup. You've got Wang as the very famous sponsor, which always caused great schoolboy hilarity, certainly at my school. So you've got Alan Judge in goal, Langan, Briggs, Malcolm Shotton, John Truitt at the back four. You've got Ray Houghton, Les Phillips, Trevor Hebbard, Kevin Brock, Jeremy Charles and John Aldridge up front. So it's a 4-4-2. Anyway, game kicks off, and actually, in fairness, Oxford smash QPR, and it's not a game to be debated on over who was the worthy winner. So what's kind of funny is Hebbard scores to make it 1-0, and he cuts. Long ball comes in. He cuts inside on the edge of the 6-yard box. But I think, let's just say, I think Paul Barron will look back on that goal with a little bit of, shall we say, embarrassment, because he almost signposts Hebbard to go for the near post. I mean, he leaves an enormous gap, so Hebbard just kind of rolls it in. And I think it's Warren Neal, actually, who makes a Sunday League type effort to try and block Hebbard in that as well, to the point where he runs past Hebbard and off the pitch. It's such a kind of terrible attempt at a block. Anyway, Oxford have won, deservedly 1-0 up. Second half, it's a lovely 1-2 on the 52nd minute between Ray Houghton and Hebbard. So it's a lovely 1-2. it gets a bit of a fortuitous deflection, falls into the path of Headley, again, plays it back to Houghton and kind of smashes it in. But what I loved is that Brian Moore, the great ITV commentator, comes out with a wonderful line and says, "You won't see a better goal than that." Now, I'm going to argue. I have, and I have previously, and I have since. If you don't believe me, go back and watch it. I don't think that's the best goal I've ever seen. Anyway, deservedly 2-0 up. And then on the 86th minute, Jeremy Charles prods one in from a couple of yards out. Aldridge, our man, shoots. Again, poor old Paul Barron doesn't cover himself in glory, as they say, as he kind of parries it to the feet of Charles, who kind of taps it in. So Oxford United win 3-0, deservedly so. They bossed the game. And actually what's nice about this is, and quite amazing really, is that Maurice Evans, who's the team manager at the time, and there's a lot of great back history to this, of course. So just to add context, the manager of QPR at the time was Jim Smith, who'd left Oxford, having been a heroic manager, having won the league the year before and the year before that. So two back-to-back promotions as champions. And then falls out with a guy called Robert Maxwell, and I believe it was over the fact that Maxwell refused to pay him and increase his contract and his wages, which seems a little harsh considering what he's done for the club. So Smith leaves in the summer, and Maurice Evans steps up to it, and of course they're playing each other, largely Jim Smith's team there, and of course poor old Jim Smith has to go and shake with Robert Maxwell as he goes to get his runners-up medal at the end. But so if you watch the footage, they just cut away at the moment Smith has, his hand is coming back from Maxwell and he's kind of stone-faced and walking away. But Maurice Evans, huge respect, because he sends up the long-serving physio Ken Fish to collect the medal on his behalf, which is really quite touching. So that's the quick summary of the game. Unfortunately, due to a ban on English clubs competing in Europe since the Heysel disaster, Oxford were unable to take their place in the UEFA Cup the following season, which is a shame. But I just want to add here, and the reason for my quite harsh my Gabrielle Blinken Greats category here is, I want to argue that Oxford United absolutely deserved to win that game, but they weren't a great side. By this point, they needed a lot of staff turnover, shall we say? Because let's step back and look at their form that season, and actually, what they achieved in League One was to finish 18th. 1 point above the relegation zone, having managed to beat an Arsenal team that were on their holidays in that last game, and they beat Arsenal 3-0 to stay up, and they finished 1 point above the drop zone. But having said all that, let's not take it away. That was Oxford's greatest ever achievement, Graham. We've done it. We've managed to get Oxford have a lovely positive 5 minutes on them. I'll hand it over to you. Were you at the game, by the way?
I was at the game, yes. And what a day. What a glorious day. What I would say is, if you're an Oxford supporter, it would probably, as a man of post 50 years now, if I had my time again, I would have sort of 40 years supporting the club and then win your first major cup, rather than winning the first cup within the first couple of years and then having 40 years of not winning cups or not coming close to winning cups.
I think it's brilliant that we've come full circle. I started off with San Marino, the pursuit of happiness, and here we are, Oxford United, the pursuit of unhappiness. It's just like an absolute piece of poetry.
But I mean, I think, seriously, what's very sad is that I think both me and Dad would agree that football was denied the chance to see two of the greatest things in Europe that season, which would have been at that era. One was whether Howard Kendall's Everton would triumph in the European Cup, and of course whether Oxford United would have triumphed in the UEFA Cup. Questions, I think we've talked about it before, Dec. We probably think that Howard Kendall Everton side would have probably won the European Cup in 1986. And I think we can all agree, and probably don't even need to debate it, that Oxford would have won the UEFA Cup in 1987.
So what was that about one-eyed greatness of?
You should rate it, Graham. Where do you see? I mean, your honest opinion. Where do you see your team?
I think if you follow that story right the way through, which rest assured we will be doing in far more detail,
better details than I'm going.
Far more detail. Right, basically, if you follow that story from 83, 84 through to winning the League Cup and reaching the top tier, so going from potentially being merged with Reading to form Thames Valley Royals, as you pointed out, Jamie, the two not only two consecutive promotions, but winning, going off as champions and then winning a cup. That art, I think that is touch of greatness. I think that is, and certainly that's why, if Hearts are touch of greats finishing second with a lunatic owner,
there are similarities here.
I think Oxford definitely touch of greatness.
Phil, where are you going? Graham's gone touch of greatness. Where are you supporting this madness?
I will, because Oxford United beat Newcastle on the way to the final, which immediately qualifies them. This, of course, was we've talked about the League Cup, but this, of course, was the halcyon days of the Milk Marketing Board sponsoring the League Cup. So it was Oxford lifted up the Milk Cup. Why the Milk Marketing Board needed to sponsor any football trophy is a bit beyond me. But I just wondered, Graham, as you were there, 12 months on from my first trip to Wembley as well, to see Sunderland lose, not for the first time.
Declan, Graham's kicked us off with touch of greatness. Phil's supporting that. Where are you with this Oxford United 85-86 team?
Just listening to that, I'm thinking, oh God, touch of greatness. We're talking about John bloody Aldridge and Ray Sodding Houghton. How hard can I get me to? You can probably hear it on the mic, but it is, in fairness, it is balanced by the wonderful. I love hearing the name Kevin Brock. Kevin Brock. Every time I hear that name, just memories. Well, one particular memory actually. Graham won't talk about that, but you've got to look at it. If Hearts have got that, then it's pretty much the same tack, isn't it? You've got a lunatic in charge. You've got a team that's struggled in the league, just about managed to stay up, and they somehow pull it out of the bag in the League Cup. So, yeah, go on. I'll give them touch of greatness. It's Christmas.
South Coast Jamie, can you save us from this madness?
Yeah, no, it's Gabrielle greatness for me all the way, Jamie. I mean, let's be really, really honest about this. It's a terrible team. They managed to get lucky in the Milk Cup, so therefore they play well. I take Graham's point about the rise, and I think that's a start. But I'm treating that totally separately. All right, that's totally separate. I'm talking about the Milk Cup here and the league. No, joking aside. No, I think no. What was the one above Gabrielle greatness? It was the Blinkered greats, wasn't it?
Blinkered greats, yeah.
I'll season of goodwill. I'll move it up to your bottom tier of the Blinkered greats.
Brilliant. And
take it from the subterranean depths of Hades into something approaching mediocrity. Yeah.
Going against podcast protocol, Graham can't be the judge on this one. It has to be me. So I think touch of greatness is nice, Graham, but I like the idea of the Gabrielle one, and I think your touch of greatness is possibly out of reach.
But very good.
I like to think that, dreams can come true. And then maybe we can do Oxford United in the new year where they can rise above blinkered greatness into touch of greatness. So I'm sticking with South Coast, Jamie. I know it's 3-2, but I think for the time being, just for the time being, Oxford United 85-86. Blinkered greatness to be continued.
To be continued. Yes, we will be doing Oxford United in more detail in the new year. One of the many pods that we have lined up. We will be coming back at you in mid to late January. We haven't quite decided when, depending how quickly we get them done with. We'll be doing Panathinaikos. We're going to be doing West Ham's 1975 winning FA Cup side. Jamie, who else have we got lined up?
I think we're going to venture into the cult brilliance of St. Pauli, who play in the Bundesliga and have a very left-wing view in terms of how they present themselves. I think we're going to try a bit of Dukla Prague, and quite possibly, and I think it was news at the very beginning of this episode, we might get Phil in to do Dallas Tornado. Probably, actually not even probably, easily, the greatest football tour that's ever been.
Excellent. So all of those coming up. But a big thank you to everyone coming on. Phil, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Happy Christmas today. Declan, thank you for your input.
Always a pleasure, never a chore, gents. Thank you very much.
South Coast Jamie, I wish I could say thank you, but you were on it.
It was great fun. Want to do that for ages. It's been fun.
I love the I do want the shirt, by the way. Excellent. Brilliant, Jamie. And Jamie Rooney, thank you.
Well, I will extend the gratitude to South Coast Jamie, as you impolitely didn't do that. Yeah, that was fantastic. All three guests have given us brilliant teams. And I think definitely there's teams here we could potentially explore in the future, but that was good fun. And quite easily, San Marino are the all-time greatest team that we've ever covered.
Yes, we've not achieved much in this 2 hours, have we? There we go. Excellent. Well, thank you all very much, and we will see you again in the new year.